Welcome to a new episode of our podcast, Lead the Future, an unedited, honest conversation to create the future. I'm Arjan Visser, futurist and your host, and join me as I chat with my friend Matt Goddard about authentic leadership transformation. Matt is the founder of 3626 and a systems thinking coach to CEOs who want more humanity in their leadership. Matt, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Anne. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me back, and always a pleasure to speak with you and to talk about a subject that I know we both enjoy talking about, authentic leadership.
Exactly, and it's like my core premise in the whole authentic leadership is that start with who, like who am I becoming, who do I travel with to the future, and who am I called to make an impact on. But in our pre-talk, you mentioned sailing as a metaphor. Yeah. I love sailing. Like for me, sailing is like the ultimate space to just lose track of time and be the whole time in the now, with the wind in your hair and trying to navigate to where you want to go. Well, you had a fresh take on that metaphor, so.
Yeah, and I know that you used the word wind in your hair just to provoke me. So
No, I mentioned it and then I thought, oops.
No, but yes, metaphor for authentic leadership and sailing. I mean, the thing I've noticed is that a lot of leaders that I admire sail. So Francois Jacot, who runs Air Liquide, Nicola Tanyan, who runs the Sovereign Wealth Fund for Norway, great sailors, enjoy sailing, and many other leaders are sailors, because it is a way to get out on the water and a way to relax and have some fresh thinking. But more than that, it's a great metaphor, as we were discussing, for authentic leadership, because there comes a point when, having sailed all of your comfortable areas where you think, actually, yes, I know this coast well, or I know this particular water well, there comes a point when in any of our leadership lives, sometimes we find ourselves in new territories. We're having to navigate unfamiliar waters, if I can press the metaphor a little further, and that requires us sometimes to develop new skills, or if not new skills, find new support and people to help us in that journey, and that's why I find the metaphor particularly helpful.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. Like sailing, when you see the coastal lines, it's a different type of sailing than when you sail away from the coast without seeing the opposite coastal line, because then you have to navigate on nearly on paper, and it's a great metaphor that authentic leadership means that you need to figure out where you are going, who you are becoming in that sense, and who you are called to serve with your value, without having the skills yet, leaving the familiar space behind, and actually the unexpected circumstances will influence your speed, your tack, as we call in sailing, but it doesn't determine where you end up. And I think that is, for authentic leadership, that makes the authentic leadership,
Yeah. I think that's great. I mean, certainly in terms, and it's not a straight line A to B in some circumstances. If you are trying to go against prevailing winds, which we're seeing a lot of in the geopolitical space at the moment, and particularly in both how different approaches to leadership. So we look across the world, we can see quite a few diverse ways of leading at the moment, some of which are very provocative, others are more passive, others are very collaborative. But in order to get to where you want to, sometimes you have to go slightly away from your goal in order, from a sailing perspective, to tack, as you rightly say, and to find your way to your destination, which to some people may seem, looking for casual observers, wondering where you're going. They think, well, surely the quickest way is from, a linear A to B, when actually the only way you're going to get there perhaps is by being prepared to go slightly off course in order to come back on course and to zigzag your way there.
Yes, yeah, and especially I think that is a great, if you look to geopolitics and already the word politics, not everything is geopolitics. There's also a lot of it is geodiplomatics.
Mm-hmm.
And in from a diplomatic point of view, that could be sometimes be the full opposite of a political one.
Mm-hmm.
Political one is you take a stand, you want to win with the other one, but from your point of view.
Yeah.
Well, from a diplomatic point of view, it's not about your opinion about the other person.
Mm-hmm.
It's about finding a win-win.
Mm-hmm.
And I love to say amidst disagreement, because that's how you ended up in the game, being on both sides of the aisle. And it's not of ending all on one side of the aisle. No, it's about the win-win. Both win, and maybe we'll never agree. And politics seems to be all about, we have to find whose opinion is the strongest. And I think that is for leadership. How do you navigate these unfamiliar waters with other leaders who are authentic as well,
mm-hmm.
but
mm-hmm.
not your version of, it fits them, not you. So you have a disagreement in style, in approach. And how do you navigate a win-win outcome? So not based on lack or competition or hostile takeover, but those things. A win-win without maybe ever finding agreement. Because it's not about your opinion or their opinion. It's about what we both want to solve.
Yeah, I think there is, keeping in mind where you're trying to get to isn't necessarily about always defending your point of view. And as you say, that probably creates more challenges and more conflicts in the world than anything else. I think from an authentic leadership perspective, it's knowing that actually happiness doesn't come from everyone being more like me. Me being the pejorative term. Happiness comes from recognizing that actually I can accept I am who I am, but not everyone has to be like me for just to find an agreeable way forward. I always remember many years ago listening to the words of Joel Edwards, who at the time was the Secretary General of an organization called the EA, or Evangelical Alliance, and he would always talk about yes, we need to find a way to disagree without being disagreeable. And that has stuck with me for decades. How, when I am in disagreement, how can I come to a place of yes, I may not necessarily agree with you, but I don't need to be disagreeable with you, and think you're a no good so and so, which is a challenge for us in our current culture, where truth, let's say, is very individualistic.
Yeah, I think because the truth is who wins in the political arena defines what is the truth. The more people that say it, and we all know it's not the amount of people that say it that determines what it is, but in the political arena it does. So long-term friend David Young once had a TED talk where he mentioned that a healthy debate starts with disagreement and never includes convincing the other one of your point of view. So in short, you have a conversation because you want to solve the same thing, and you both add value because you have another point of view. So don't focus on the point of view, but focus on what you want to solve together.
Yeah.
And we see that, of course, that's in diplomacy, I think, really important. That's in negotiation, really important. But politics, well, my opinion about it nowadays, it looks really close to clickbait. It's throwing opinions to get the majority vote. And I think that's where that has its space. But in true leadership, you're not here to manage the waters. You're here to navigate and lead authentically over the waters to the new land, where you're pioneering to.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think to some extent, I think there is certainly in terms of authentic leadership. I think there is the need to be able to lead, and that's about inspiring people to achieve a particular outcome. I don't think that an authentic leader is someone who has to have all of the skills in order to achieve that. And I think being authentic is saying, actually, I don't have a skill in, let's say, how to adjust the jib. I need someone else to help me with that because they've got more of a skill. I don't need. I need somebody who understands, let's say, the design and build of a boat that I'm sailing. Because actually that's going to help me navigate the waters better and to make sure that the performance is good. But as a leader, I need to inspire those people in my team towards an outcome, or to have a vision of where we're trying to get to, and bring those skills together, recognizing that as a leader, I have some areas or gaps in my knowledge and understanding and skill base, but actually I can utilize and bring together people who have shared values and common understanding of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Which immediately reminds me of that demands a certain level of maturity, that I'm not limiting my scope to where I have influence, or we call it influence, control, I think is the better word.
Okay.
But just, understand that it's not about my ego. It's not about how I look on the photo. It is not about me not making mistakes. It's all about, I need other people around me. I don't feel threatened by other people having the skill set that I don't have. I don't confuse with what other people have, and I don't have with lack, because then I will be envious of their skill, and instead of collaborating, we start unhealthy competition.
Yeah.
So in a way, it all comes back to, and we talk many times in our podcast about the ego. And I've said many times, nothing wrong with the ego, but your ego plays a role.
Yeah.
It's like your faith and your vision. It all plays a role. And it's unhealthy when it is trying to be in the lead outside the role.
Yeah.
And I've learned through some interactions with friends, clients, that your ego always falls back to predictable / guaranteed outcome. So actually it brings my mindset back to the safety mode, or what other people call the reptile brain, fight and flight mode. But the visionary elements happen beyond my autopilot, beyond my comfort zone, in my growth side. So it is in that 3-piece picture that we use for the brain or the mindset. It's the full opposite of pioneering, that the new waters, in that sense, going where we haven't been gone before.
Yeah, and I just on the subject of the ego and being able to understand the function of the ego, and sometimes when it's in overactivation and has its hand firmly on the tiller, so to speak, we can get all kinds of trouble. The work that really has helped me understand that is the work of Byron Katie, and Byron Katie's work. You can go on her website, and there's a ton of free videos there where she is walking people through understanding how the ego has maybe jumped into the driving seat occasionally, and really peels that back and helps us see where those challenges have been, because the ego is trying to protect you all the time, but it doesn't always do the best job of it, because it's very not surprisingly egocentric, and is thinking about itself all the time, rather than actually how do we achieve a goal that we share, and what's the best way of achieving that from a leadership perspective. It thinks about what's the best way for me and what's the least discomfort that I'm going to experience in achieving that, rather than recognizing that actually sometimes to achieve a goal as an authentic leader, I need to be willing to know that I can experience discomfort, but I can handle it. The challenge for us is when we feel like we can't handle it. That's when we spiral down into what I call kind of a self-full perspective, where I'm just thinking about, well, what am I going to lose here, rather than actually how can we work together in terms of, and get curious about what could be the outcome.
Yeah. Well, I had a silly experience earlier this week where I called a store for some boating equipment, and I asked some advice between two brands of outboard engines, and I got a really great advice based on what he had in stock, and I got a really negative review on the comparing competing engine that he just run out of. So was that a useful conversation? Well, not for me to make my decision based on which of the two engines.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really useful for me to actually figure out, is this the store where I'm going to buy my equipment?
Yeah.
And well, you don't have to guess for the answer. Of course not, because it felt like I'm not seen, not heard. I don't feel known for my challenge. I only hear the guaranteed, I can sell you this because I have it.
Mm-hmm.
So actually that is, I think, that's for me a really silly example about where I've met an egocentric reply versus an honest reply based on, like, these are the differentiating things of option A and option B. What do you need? Well, I can do you an offer on option B because that's the one I have in stock. I can't help you right now with option A. That would be a different conversation, because then I would feel empowered to make a choice. And I think that is a great fruit of authentic leadership, that the people that surround you feel empowered to make a choice.
No, I hear that, and I think a lovely example in that, from an authentic leadership perspective, understanding the different goals in that conversation. You're wanting some helpful advice in terms of how to make a decision about what engine you should buy in terms of the best performance for your vessel. The guy, bless him, is wanting to make the best decision to put food on his table at the end of the day. So your goals weren't particularly aligned in that sense. And the guy, bless him, is in a position of saying, actually, I need to be able to sell a piece of kit in order to make my numbers. is maybe in a place of misunderstanding about how to best go about that, because now you're not going to go back and buy either, potentially from that store. But as an authentic leaders, it's an opportunity for us to stand back and understand where there are misaligned goals, so that we can try to understand a little bit about what's going on and have a little bit of empathy and understanding around that in our organizations, so that we don't, treat people in a way that, they did well, I'm never going to use that person again. But they may have particular qualities once we have aligned goals. I don't know whether that lands for you at all.
Well, definitely, because I'm just already reflecting on our first 20 minutes into our podcast. What if we take that one as a framework? What is the aligned goal or the desired shared outcome, versus that we have judgment based on the approach. If we look to geopolitics, then I believe that most people who have an opinion, speak and write about it, have never looked or made leading the shared goals or the shared outcome, but just created clickbait based on their opinion of the approach.
Yeah.
And of course, we have a saying in the Netherlands, which is like roughly translated like, the goal doesn't sanctify the approach. I don't know if there's an English saying in that's that similar kind of thing, but the bottom line of that saying is like, it's all about the goal. So we don't judge each other about how dirty we play the game. That kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess our English phrase would that be, the ends don't justify the means.
Yeah. But if we don't know the shared ends, why do we have an opinion about the means? While we are not the decision makers in it, while we are not the leaders in it, that makes us just the complainers on the side.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I think if we're only standing on the sidelines, judging what's going on, if we haven't taken the time to step back and come from a place of trying to understand the shared goals and the approaches that are being used to achieve that from an authentic place, it can sometimes seem peculiar that the actions that people are taking, because we're not necessarily in that tack, if you like, we're perhaps standing on the cliff edge saying, well, why is Arjan going in that direction when the finish line is over there? But of course, they're not understanding the prevailing winds, they're not understanding the currents, and they're not understanding how you have been trained, developed, and experienced a life of sailing compared to somebody else who is taking a different approach. So there's all of those particular aspects of understanding why people do certain things from an authentic leadership perspective. For me as a leader to kind of go, okay, how can I be a little less wrapped up in my own approach and try to be a little bit more understanding and a little bit empathetic to what else is going on.
Yeah. Well, it just brings back other memories. Like years ago, I made the statement, healthy leadership styles don't exist. Because that means that there is, we can box it, we can label it, and we all comply. So it's a ranking system, that works when we want to manage things. But if we lead and we make it authentic, and everyone is unique and living them unique, authentic selves and express that through their personal development and their growth, that we should not be surprised that the current systems and processes don't support it. So we experience it as messy. And we can be offended about the messiness because it doesn't fit our current ranking system.
Yeah.
And I think, but that is the invitation to not be offended and take offense, but actually use that as a trigger to figure out, but what is the shared intent, shared goal, shared outcome that we talk about here. Because else we're just judging what we don't understand.
Yeah, I like the fact that you're suggesting there that it's like, actually, why am I reacting in this way to this particular circumstance? And there's stuff in my life that I find myself reacting to stuff, and I've got to try to process that and come back to the place of, actually, why am I behaving in that particular way? And some of it is egoic, some of it is conditioning, some of it is the thought processes and how I process information. But having that internal calibration, at least, is really helpful to understanding how I can lead more authentically, and how sometimes I need to go, you know what, I'm sorry, I got that wrong, I made a mistake. How can I clean up my mess and move forward, rather than trying to go, oops, I made a mistake. How do I cover that up and behave and think and imagine I was doing something else and try to convince everybody else that that's what I was trying to achieve? Because that's inauthentic leadership.
Yeah, I love the word you use, calibrate. We are so easy calibrating to the norm. But authentic leadership is not about the norm. It's calibration to one's purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And the authentic leadership is then an expression of one's fuller version of identity.
Mm-hmm.
And then the skills, the how is not the starting point, but the where to is the starting point. And working it from the where to down to the what, and how the how is explored, developed in through skills. But that's not, you cannot be on the outside and actually contribute your opinion in that sense. That actually makes life less stressful. That I don't form an opinion about what I think or that I understand, but actually I will act to what I believe is the right direction to prepare and contribute to. That gets biblical proportions, this statement,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a case of, you and I have had different upbringings. You and I have had different ways of seeing things, but actually bringing those different perspectives together and finding a new approach that is a collaboration or a blending of the two is what I think helps us as humanity, advance forward. Being dogmatic about, my experiences and my approach are truth, and therefore that's the only way forward. I think that as humanity, that would just, cause us to devolve in some respects, and end up in our little individual tribes of echo chambers.
Yeah. So that means that we have to redefine quite a lot of things that we currently quantify as what is success. If I just think of your last statement, and I would add the word, how do I scale this? Well, I have to be dogmatic to scale things or institutionalize it when I am going back to that small set of KPIs that actually only are surrounded in the context of scarcity, time, money, volume, quantity, all those kind of things. So we need another measure or a redefinition of not just what's leadership, but also what's progress.
I think that's true. I think there is a certain amount of redefining the baseline, because the baselines that we've inherited are perhaps an over exaggeration of what success looks like. Perhaps they're in overactivation, and so we are driven towards this, what we believe as being what success should look like, and in fact, actually, it's not where the baseline is at all. And so redefining that, recalibrating the baseline such that actually we are having a more authentic, truer, there's that word truth again, I guess, but a shared expectation of what the baseline is, I think is probably going to help us in the long run.
Yeah, more true to yourself. And then it's not, I don't mean the truth, but then I think now we're going to start about loyalty, loyal to the other as you are loyal to yourself, which is faithfulness, another word that pops up in that space. But we can continue forever, and to make our listeners not overrun.
Indeed. Yeah. You and I could talk forever, I'm sure.
Yeah, we left the waters and we started.
And you will get that opportunity.
So, what is your key takeaway from this conversation?
Yeah, I think my key takeaway is, as to go back to our initial metaphor, which is like, if I'm sailing my boat into unfamiliar waters, then I think I want to be grounded enough to know what I know, and to be honest enough to know what I don't know, and to be willing to share with others what my vision, what my goal is, and build a team around shared values and shared expectations, but from the honesty of saying, actually, I have gaps in my knowledge, which I'm looking to you guys to help me close.
Yeah. Well, not to compete, but to take another key takeaway. I think that calibrating to your purpose regularly, like daily, weekly, monthly, that kind of routine, versus complying to the norm. And the other one is don't spend, or even spend less energy on contributing to the storm by forming my own opinion about what is happening, while I'm actually not part of that. I'm not a player in the game.
Yeah.
That creates a lot of extra bandwidth to authentically express yourself instead of being occupied.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, for all the listeners, if you found this interesting, then you have made it to the end. There must be something that resonated with you. There must be a trigger. And it's not just our conversation, it's also your conversation. So use that trigger, use that resonance to connect. You can use the link businessrevivalist.com/connect to just plan a short call, or reply to leave a comment in one of the outlets that we use to stream this podcast, and directly connect to Matt or to me. And the encouragement not to waste triggers in life. If it resonates, who knows? There's something for you to unlock more of your authentic leadership. Matt, thank you for your time. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I guess for me, it's ready about.
Okay, then over and out.
Take care.